Right, hello. What's today? Yes, so today we're going to, it's not a tutorial as such, just a continuation with the toilet roll throne that we made yesterday. Going to add, hopefully, a couple of other poses to this and do a little bit more work on the furniture item itself. But we're also, this is slightly off topic, we are also, should be streaming on Facebook and Twitch. So we're going through Restream.io. Just double checking. Whoops. Not quite sure how long the delay is. But anyway, so going to add a couple of other poses to the toilet roll throne that we created yesterday. So what we have to do first, though, is do a little bit of work on the throne itself. So where is it? It's that one. Open. Oh no, it's not that one. That's the pose. We want the actual furniture item. There it is. Throne 4. Oh, it's dropped our texture because I renamed the file and moved it. So have to re-establish the texture. So whenever you create a project in Blender and you open the file again at some point in the future and your object appears pink, it means the image is mapped to the material, but it can't find it. This differs from if the objects are white, completely white, which basically means that there is no, there might be a material assigned to it. I need zoom. Where's zoom again? Zoom it. So if the object's pink, it means that there's a, well, this is an image texture node. So there is a node associated with the material, but it's missing an image. So it's either missing the image or it can't find the image. If the object is white, it basically means that this is missing. So you could have a material, so you could have principal BSDF and the material output. So those are the basic two nodes that all materials have. So your object could be assigned a basic material, but it doesn't have the texture node. And if that's the case, the objects will appear white instead of pink. So there is a color difference. The color matters. So what we need to do is re-establish the image association. So click on the file icon and browse to wherever the image is. Oh, there it is, toilet paper. So select and open, and there is our image assigned to the object. So that's the difference with Blender 2.8. We need to rename this. That's the difference with Blender 2.8, is that as soon as the material is, as soon as the image is associated with the material, it will appear on the object if the object has a UV map. So if there is no UV map, then nothing appears on the object. So before we do anything, I want to do something to this to make it a little bit more interesting. Let's see if that's grouped. Oh, that's why grouped. Okay, so hide that. Going to do a bit of vertex painting. View, sidebar, and then we want the tool, and that's where all the painting stuff is. Just going to tint some of these. Oops, why is it not working? Oh, that's right, because we have to be in solid mode, because for some reason we cannot see vertex colors, so I'm just tinting these or shading the object. So shading the mesh. Color values are stored on the vertexes, which we can see if we enable these two buttons, that one in particular. But we have to be in solid mode for vertex painting, because the vertex colors don't appear on the mesh when we're in texture or material preview. Now why is it not doing it? That should be painting those. Oh, that's why. So what we're just going to do is shade the mesh and just make it a little bit more interesting, because in IMVU, without the shading, the objects look really flat. So anywhere that's going to be not hidden so much as not plainly visible will be shaded. So for this, what we want to look at the object as is its position relative to the ground and then relative to other objects that are in the scene. And how they might be occluding light from hitting our objects. And this might mean temporarily hiding certain bits of the mesh so that they can be painted and then rejoining everything together, back together again. But it's a little awkward because, let's make that really dark, because we can't see what the mesh looks like with the texture assigned. Because being able to preview that is not enabled. Right, so we have to edit mode. Select these and then hold the control key down and press the numpad plus key, and it selects detached elements. So what we're doing is essentially selecting an element from each of the objects that we want to select, and it selects all the detached or attached, and then we can press the P key or mesh. Where is it? It's not split. Where is this one hiding? Oh, there it is, separate selection. So what that does is it creates a separate object that we can then edit on its own or paint on its own. can't see inside there, so whoops. It's kind of annoying that we can't see the vertex painting. Because you can't assess, because it's such an old school way of shading things that I guess the foundation doesn't consider it to be that important anymore. So but for things like IMVU, hello there, that's Trixie. Yep, everyone's into toilet paper. Well, not necessarily an IMVU streamer so much as we're streaming tutorials or just creator stuff to do with IMVU. So we don't actually necessarily stream the shenanigans that go on in IMVU, but we do stream stuff about creating for IMVU. And the tone of sarcasm that you might be picking up is natural. In the words of what's her name? Oh, you mean chatting? Oh yeah, it's still do the old chatting. Whoops. Oh, yes. So the IMVU have a new beta out, and it's basically it wouldn't be incorrect to say that it's a glorified web browser, but it's obviously a bit more complicated than that in terms of what it can do. But yes, that will be the new client when that's released. So we can expect that to be in beta form for a good few months, if not a year or two, before it actually gets released, because IMVU, when it first came out, always had the IMVU beta tag, and it stood that way for yonks. Do I think it's better? That's a good question. I don't know whether better is the right word so much as it's just a different way of interfacing with the program and using it. But it uses a completely new game engine, which is browser based. And if you are on the website now, you're probably already aware of the difference between IMVU Next and the desktop client. Oh, yeah, you could, yes, you could say that, yes. So there's a difference between the original IMVU, which looked a bit like the old messenger programs of years ago. Then they changed that to what we have now, which is the desktop client. And the desktop client is now going to be changed again to a new version that's web-based. Classic one, yeah. There's probably some screenshots of that floating around somewhere. But that's super old school. Wow, that's, yeah, about the same as, so you're a grandfathered creator then. So all the IMVU users that were creators, it was about 2010 they instigated that, so yes. So if you were creating back then, you will be a grandfathered creator. Yeah, that's a long time. 2008, 2009. Whoops. So you've probably got about, what, 100 products? Well, if you keep watching these streams and watch the archives, you'll be making products, your own meshes, in no time. Oh yes, yeah. Well, you can still make products. Get yourself prepped and ready. Because it may very well be, in the not too distant future, we're all going to have to work from home. Oh yeah, people do still buy a lot. Some of the top creators, some of the very top creators, are earning a lot of US dollar, well, real cash. So that's that layer. So we now need to select these two at the top, detach those so that we can isolate them, and then vertex paint those also. Yes. Well, yes, you'll run out of food long before you run out of toilet paper. Assuming you've got more than one roll. Really could do with being able to see the vertex painting, the vertex colors that are assigned to all the objects instead of just the one that's selected. Okay, so let's join these all together. Select, 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 Control J, or object join. And that should then mean that when we go back into vertex paint, it'll show it on all the objects, or on all the elements that we've been painting. So yes, sometimes we have to separate the mesh into sections. Just turn on wireframe into sections so that we can gain access to all the relevant parts to paint the vertex colors to. And by default, if no vertex colors are assigned to objects, meshes are rendered white or with white vertex color data. Okay, that looks okay. Object. So we can't see. What's that one doing up there? Oh, that's the one from the front there. So select, join. Let's go back, double check vertex painting. Whoops. Right, so that's the vertex painting done. Put the helper back. Whose materials look a bit shiny. There we go. Save this. Save as. Number 5. Save as. Right, so want to add some additional poses. So we can do one of two things. We can either duplicate the seating node, or we can just use the wherever it is standing. What we're going to do is add a couple of poses, pose spots or seat spots or seat nodes. So what we're going to do, just move that out of the way or hide that. Let's create, so in our, this is the outliner. We can use this to organize the scene. So what we're going to do, click on that, right click, new. That creates a new collection, which is essentially a layer. Double click, call this throne. We can click drag, and we can scroll up whilst the object is, the item is selected. Move that up to the top there. And what we're going to do is just select our mesh object, drag that into our throne, so that we can manage the project a bit more easily. So we want the root node. Oh, that's why. Right, so we want to block floor. Oh, that's hidden. Oh, not yet implemented. Okay, so let's hide that for the moment. So we can grab the sitting node, drop that in throne. So we've got a group now, a group that we can manage within a group. And we can hide different elements of the object using the outliner. So what we're going to do, same sort of thing, going to duplicate, just need to adjust these materials. They're a bit shiny. So what we're going to do is select the standing node set. Whoops. So if that happens, we've over-selected. Hold the Shift key down and just click twice depending on. So when we did that selection, one of the other objects was the active object, which is outlined slightly brighter orange. So in order to deselect something that was included as part of the group, but you want to exclude, you have to click it twice. So Shift, click once to highlight it, make it the active object, then again to deselect it. So what we can do with this is duplicate this. So Shift D, move that to the other side. So what we want is to position this so we're using the seat node, which controls the group, so that includes the nodes. So that's capture picture and handle and the dummy. They're all attached to that. And these are going to be custom poses. So we can move, make sure we're in global. We can move and rotate these two as a group and just reposition them so that they are out of the way essentially. Because what we need to do, these are custom nodes, or these will be custom seats. So we select the seat node, and we can either do this in object properties, or we can do it in the outliner. Double click, and we can call this bog roll. So that's seat 02 bog roll. And the other one, double click, seat 03 dot bog roll. And these now need to be attached or linked to the root node. So let's hide that. hide the helper. So all of these nodes now need to be attached to the root node of the furniture item. So select them in order. So select the seat nodes first, then the root node, and as we discovered yesterday, we can't use, well, the option that we want for parenting isn't available. So what we have to do is Control P, and we get the Set Parent To dialog, and we want Object Keep Transform, and that keeps the location of the objects in place where they are, but will connect them. So we've now got these dashed relationship lines that join all of these, or indicate that those are all joined to the root node. Same on the other side. Whoops. Root node, Control P, keep transform. Before we do anything, just double check the names. So that's seat 03. So we have to change these. 03, they need to match. So that's 02. Double check, click the root, and the whole lot should move. So yes, when you are setting up your seating, although the seat nodes move as a group, you can change the position of things, but it's always a good idea, particularly for the catcher and pitcher nodes, that you move those as a group, because the distance is set. They will work, but when the avatars interact with one another, which is what these two nodes are for, so when you do an interactive action in IMVU, one avatar is facing that way and the other avatar is facing that way, so they face one another. If you get the distances wrong, the animations don't link up, or whatever the sequence is that they're actually doing. So let's save this, save as 6. And we need to do an export test to make sure that this works. Whoops. So 01, 01, 01, 01, Bob roll. Bog roll, 0202, right, okay, so that looks okay. So select, and then we need to select all the nodes. Root node, whoops. Select the mesh, make sure that's the active object, otherwise IMVU might complain, and then export. Export FBX. So number 6, that's okay. Selected objects, Everything else is alright. Apply modifiers, that's optional, generally leave that active. Armature, always disable add leaf bones. We don't need bake animation, and then just folder, file name, export. So that's exported, so let's start IMVU. Right, so IMVU. Right, so create mode, derive a new product, furniture, hi Liana, you're, well, for you you're early. Import, so we're importing now, FBX import, load FBX, we're in furniture. Oh, yeah, I imagine not many people will be getting much sleep. So where's our toilet paper? Oh, it's in the wrong folder. So 2.8, number 6, open. Oh, farm animals, boggle.mesh. So it's brought in our mesh from previous, so we named that .mesh. You don't have to do this, but it helps with clarity if you're importing a big project, so that you know the difference between a mesh, or well, essentially what the difference between all the objects are. So we can use the name bogroll for everything and make a distinction with .mesh, and then obviously we've got our materials set up the way that need to be set up. Disable rename room nodes, 0.01 scale, and then import changes, applied changes. There is our bogroll, and it should have, which it does, we now have 3 seat nodes, and we can also check. Oh, it is active, that's all right. So if we disable, so we've got the dark vertex colors, so we can disable those if we want, or enable them. Right, so that works. So we now need to create custom pose. Oh. Yes, I don't suppose all the crisis that's going on helps with the farming, so you have my sympathies. Right, so save. What we need to do now, new instance of Blender. So we could use the previous pose file that we created, but we have to bring in or append the new version of the mesh anyway. So open Avatar 2.8. We want the alternative pose file. Which is that one. Open. I have to double check. Oh, it's kept that data, that's okay. Double check the scene settings because sometimes it doesn't do it and you have to reset the scene. Yes, UK is running out of toilet paper. Everyone was panic buying just as you were over your way. So we're going to append furniture. .8 Throne 6. So basically, as mentioned yesterday, when you're appending blend files into another Blender file, it's essentially acting like an archive that can be browsed into so that we can select. Oh, did you download the beta, Trixie? Yeah, it won't have all the features of the desktop. Yeah, it won't have all the features, but it's pretty interesting. So yes, when you are appending a file, it acts like a zip file. So you can double click the file and go into it, and it shows you the contents. So we want objects, and for this we want bog roll mesh, and then we want the seat nodes. So we want seat 01, 02 and 03 and the root node. And then we're just going to click append, and that brings all of that lot into the file. So as yesterday, or as the previous video, the seat nodes act as reference points. Oh, it's going to do this thing again. Let me save this. Save as. Three. You'll not need to do two shared screen. What do you mean by that, Tricky? So yes, the seat nodes act as reference points. Oh, it's going to do this again. Yes, hang on. So what did we do yesterday to solve this? Oh, that's weird. Going to have to reopen the file, see if that fixes it. Nope. I don't know if this is a bug or what. There we go. Oh, that's right. Yes, so the difference, it's a bit of an annoying change, but in the older versions of Blender, if the armature was in pose mode, you could still select objects that are in the scene. But in Blender 2.8, if the armature is in pose mode, you can't do that. So if you import something if you append something into the scene and the armature is in pose mode, it's going to appear like there's something wrong with the scene because you can't select anything. So you always have to remember to exit out of pose mode so that you can then select the individual elements. Whoops. Right, so the seat nodes, the importance of the seat nodes, we import those because those are the positional references that are needed to create the pose. Because, don't know how clearly this comes up on screen, but there are two, well, all the objects have them, but these are the origins, the 0, 0, 0 origin point of all the objects, and for poses, custom poses, they have to match up. So what we want to do is when we're creating a custom pose, we have to position the nodes or that origin point at grid 0, so where the green and red axes cross. And that means that the pose is then directly above the seating node or the sitting node, whether it's a sitting or standing. So that now then means that we can do a pose, and the avatar will be positioned correctly in IMVU relative to the seat node. So we've got the action editor open, that's okay. T-pose, let's create. Now what's it doing? Oh, it's the in front thing. Right, okay. So let's create a pose. If you want to see all the bones at the same time, disable this little icon, because that shows the selected bone only. So if that's disabled, all the avatar bones will appear. So that's all of them. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Well, so what is that for? Oh, I see. Right. Okay. So you're streaming. Right. Yeah. So you're streaming one but controlling with the other. Right. So let's create a pose. What should we do? So what is this? This is seat 03. So let's just rename this. I mean, rename the action down here. So seat 03 dot action, and then we'll do one for seat 02. Yes, well, we'll all need luck soon with all of this stuff. So that's the shoulder. Elbow. And this is the bit that always takes ages because it's fiddly. So we're selecting individual bones. Check that in relation to the ground. So now we want to move the neck bones, but we need to be careful with this because they go a bit skew if. Whoops. I wonder. Okay, well, let's leave it at that. So that's one pose. So to prep this for FBX and IMVU, we need to select everything. Oops, select all. New keyframe, and then insert. So press the I key, location, rotation. And then we need to create the reset. So timeline slider to frame 10, and then Alt R and Alt G, or pose clear transform all. And that creates the reset that IMVU needs to know that there's actually a pose there, static pose. So that's one pose. So we can either create another pose file and re-import the mesh and seat nodes, or we can use the same file, create another action, and just reposition the mesh. So that's, as we've got this file open, that's what we'll do. So that is our action. So what we want to do is duplicate this. So just double check. Yeah. So we're going to duplicate this. So a new action. And it'll duplicate this sequence, which we can then rename seat 02. Leave the avatar where it is and just reset. So pose, clear transform, all, pose, clear transform, all, and then exit pose mode, select all the bits, and this time we want to center on seat 2's origin point. And that also needs to be at 0, 0. So now we can create another pose. Avatar, pose mode. Let's do another. Oh yeah, of course, there is that. So get rid of all of that. Whoops. Why has it done that? I'm not sure why it's done that. That was very weird. Select all, delete. There we go. So this is the thing with Blender. When you're working with Blender in animation, if you move an object, it will automatically create a sequence. So if you don't position the object at frame 1, when you move to another frame, it'll move back to its original position. So now we should be able to create a pose. Yeah, so that's okay now. All these little idiosyncrasies, you know the word, these little things. Idiosyncrasies. What's the word I was looking for? Whoops. That's going to be a painful position. Yeah, that's going to collapse the... So this is a bit tricky. Because that's going to cause a lot of crinkle in the hips. But there isn't really another way of... Well, there isn't really a way of avoiding that. Whoops. So the two poses, if it hasn't twigged already, are a bit of a Mickey take of Conan. So that's our second pose. So we need to duplicate this, so we need to select all, frame 5, and we can copy paste. Actually, what we can do here is select everything, Control C, copy, move the timeline slider, Control V, and it'll copy the pose. We need to reset, double check, clear transform all. So that's pose 1. And the other one is pose 2, but we can't really switch. Well, we can, but it's not going to change the position. So that's the other pose, but that's aligned to this seat node. But obviously, because we've moved the objects around, it's not syncing up. So that's seat pose 2. And if you make any minor changes, make sure to duplicate them. So we need to copy again, copy, paste. Right, so that's the second pose. So save this, save as 4. So to export, we want to exit pose mode, make sure the armature is selected, and this is for the poses. So File, Export, FBX, Selected Objects, Apply Unit, that's fine, Geometry, that's fine, we can leave that, Armature, always disable, always, 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 Add leaf bones, and then in Bake Animation we want to disable NLA strips and force start end keying. And what this does, or what it'll do, is force Blender to not segmentize, it'll create separate strips for the two sequences that we've got. So we've got Ceto 2 and Ceto 3, and those are two separate sequences. We need to keep them separate, and we do that by disabling these options, NLA strips and start end keying, and then export. So we exported, right, so we should now be able to use this. So we'll do this again, derive new product, rooms and furniture, furniture, go. So we'll do this from scratch, FBX import, load FBX, throne 6, 0.01, 0 because we're replacing the default. It's got our materials, import, import changes, apply changes. So there is the mesh. So we need to do this again, load FBX, and we need to load in the pose. And it'll give us this warning that there's no meshes, which is fine. Import changes, and it's brought in our actions. And there are a couple of, as mentioned yesterday, there are a couple of example poses that we don't need, so we can disable those. That's these two. Don't need those. So we've got seat 02 and seat 03. Apply scale 0.01 and then import. Apply changes. And we need to go back into config and make sure that we're using the right root node, which is the furniture. So we've got our seat nodes. So what we have to do is actions, add. So this is stance dot bog roll. Now is it hyphen seat 01? I think that's right. Avatar, ensemble. Oh, we have to import the other file as well. So there are actually 3 poses for this. So fbx import again. And that is tp cpose 02. Same error, same warning. Import. It's tpose. It didn't rename the file in previously, so import. Again, change the skeleton. Make sure it's using the right one. Right, so now action cpose, and that's tpose. 0, apply changes. Need to double check that. So that's that pose, but we've got a number of poses that we need to distinguish. So let me reference the tutorial for this. So this is the bit that we're after. Seat 02. Okay, so seat 01. Oh, that's not right. Oh, that's in Blender. So in IMVU, once we import this, think yeah, that's start dot. It's been a long time since I've done any furniture items. So that's that pose. Add. So let's try. I think they have to be unique. So yeah, so the seat nodes have to be named. Well, they are named. They're named O2. Could have sworn that's how you do it. Start dot bog roll, which is the let's double check. Yeah, that should work. Let's add the other one. Stance dot bog roll hyphen seat 03. I need to reference one of my old projects with multiple seats. So intermission music. Let's just save this. Save as. So they have to be okay, so they have to be unique. The appends, so this bit has to be unique, so you can't use, although we've got seat 01 which delineates the number of seats, so we've got 1, 2 and 3. Ordinarily you might assume that those mean that the seats are unique, but when that's imported into IMVU it doesn't like that, so we have to save that. Where's the other project? Whoops, wrong one. Say bog roll, so that's O2. Bog-roll 03. Let's do the other one, Bog-roll 01. So save and then re-export. So select all the nodes and the root node and then the mesh. So that's that's everything. And then re-export. Export FBX. Selected objects. That's okay. Disable. Disabled. And we'll just save over the top of that. So export. So let's re-import the FBX file. Thrown 6. 0, 0.01, disable, import. Okay. So now this should work. Yeah, there we go. So, loops 0 to play infinitely, start frame 1, end frame 2, and that gives us our static pose. Which it should be doing. Frame 1, frame 2. There we go. Oh, come on, stop mucking about. What a palaver. So there is our pose. So let's add actors. Ooh, he's tiny. And then of course there's the pose in the middle. So that is our furniture item with additional seat poses. Yeah, seat poses, custom poses. So the thing to remember then for furniture and custom poses is that the seat nodes have to be unique. So the append that you put on the back there has to be unique. You can't use the same append even though the seats themselves are differentiated with the numbers in Blender, so the two don't correlate essentially. So make sure that if your furniture item has more than one seat node or seat pose set, that each one is unique. So disable gaze, and that'll stop the avatar breaking its neck. There's pose 1. Well, say that, but might have to go back and adjust that because that's freaky. That's like the one we did yesterday where the avatar's neck was broken basically. That's very disturbing. So that's what I mean about the neck bones. You have to be... Yeah, it does seem to happen often. Glad you're still here, Liana. So we have to go back into... And we don't need to readjust the scene for this. So all we need, because we've got the pose where it needs to be, so all we need to do is activate. You see, it looks fine in Blender. So that's how... So if I align this... Oh, and she's offset. So let me just save the file and then reload it, because that sometimes causes TP thrown plus poses 2. Oh, fed the cats. Alright, so we're going to close this. Close all of them. And that removes the temporary file cache that IMVU keeps in place. Create, and then reopen it. And hopefully that should have reset it. No, it's not. So I'll have to go back. Well, the neck's alright, but the avatar's tilted over. Not quite sure why. Shouldn't be. Let's double check. So select all, copy, paste. Oh, we're in the middle of a toilet roll, so hang on. Oh no, that's fine. Right, so pelvis. Reset. So it's the pelvis bone, because the whole avatar looks to be tilted over. Whoops. The whole avatar appears to be tilted over, which basically means the pelvis bone controls that. So there's some weird shenanigans going on with the way the pelvis bone ow, that looks like it hurts. where the pelvis bone is rotated for some reason, so I'll have to investigate that. But for now, yeah, pointy butt syndrome. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing with the avatars. They are low resolution, and the weight painting on them, or the way that you have to distort them in order to get a pose out of it. So let's double check this. Wireframe, see-through. That looks fine. I don't know why that's doing that. See if I can depoint the butt. Yeah, maybe just something to do with the way it's interpreting things. But it should be okay. Oh, yes, and because we've changed it, let's copy that pose, paste. Fix the neck while we're here. Whoops. Let's try that. Copy, paste. No, there is some interpretation issue going on when IMVU does do stuff like this. So interpretation, subject to interpretation, is a legitimate. Because what it could also be is the fact that we're exporting two poses at the same time. Or two action sequences. So let's try this. Export FBX 4B. Export. Right, so that's action 3, so we need to import that file again. .4b, open, and we only need, that's fine, action 03 for this, so we're going to replace the one that's in there with just that one. 0.01, rename disable, and then import success, apply changes, and it should just use it. Oh, reset the skeleton. Make sure we're always using the furniture skeleton and not the avatar. So if you import an action, it brings in skeleton of the avatar, which we don't want to use. We want the furniture skeleton. Oh, there we go. That's done it. So there we are. There are our poses. So let's make it full screen. Yeah, so that's it. It may be something to do with exporting multiple action sequences and importing them at the same time into the same file. So there is our toilet roll throne with 3 custom poses. That's the board king or the board queen and their hangers on. Yeah, it's a confused IMVU. So there is our custom toilet roll throne. So save this, save as TP throne plus poses number 3. So of course it just now means taking your screenshot and then uploading to the catalogue. Still got a bit of butt deformation, but you can't see it from the front, so that's all that matters. So it is kind of it's, if you're doing stuff that's relatively complicated, it can be quite tricky to make sure that everything is, because we can't, unlike 3D Studio Max users, Blender users can't do everything in the same file, which makes things much more tricky to do, because we've got to create projects in sections. So as we saw in the previous video, we're creating the furniture item, setting it up for custom seats, and then we have to append that into the pose file in order to create the poses, because we can't use the same file to produce a single item. We have to use different files. I mean, granted that there are different versions of 3D Studio Max files, but they are generally much more product specific as opposed to element specific. So we have to use, for furniture with poses, custom poses, we have to use the furniture file, the furniture starter file, and the pose starter file to create a furniture item. And it's the same with, well, with accessories, we can use the accessory file. So for sake of this video, so for accessories, we're using an accessory file, and that allows us to create an accessory that's attached to one of the accessory attachment node skeletons. Each one of these is a separate skeleton or armature in its own right. For furniture, we have to use the furniture file, which contains the basic elements, but we can't do any poses with this. We're just stuck with the seat dummies. That's what I was looking for. The seat dummies. I don't think this is the same with 3D Studio Max, so you can create a pose in the furniture file for Max. I think. Don't quote me on that. So for us, we have to use the furniture file to create the actual furniture, and then the pose file to create the poses that are associated with it. So that's our pose in Blender, and that's the pose in IMVU. Oh, and the neck is pointing in the right way. So it must be something to do with the neck bones that you manipulate. So if you're going to twist the head, you have to twist the head bone more than you twist the neck bones. Otherwise, the avatar will break its neck. Yes, the avatars won't run out of toilet paper. I think there's quite a lot of toilet paper products in the catalogue now. Right, so that's the next. That was the next step of adding a couple of custom poses, a couple more custom poses to the furniture item that we created in the previous video. So hopefully we can do some more of these, not necessarily with toilet paper. Right, so on that note, we've been going for nearly 2 hours. We're just a couple of minutes short of 2 hours, so we shall call it quits there, and see you on the next video, which will be whenever that is. It'll be when it's what's the phrase? It's ready when it's ready. Right. We shall see you anon. Bye for now, everyone. Oh, and thanks for lurking, lurkers, and thanks for chatting, Liana, and what was the other? Tricky. Or Zicky. TZ. Thanks for chatting, you guys, and thanks for watching the lurkers. We shall see you on the next stream, so bye for now.